Title: The Glass Botanist. When I left the house at 18, my family's parting words echoed like a preacher's sermon. "You'll be nothing but a failure, Lillian. A disgrace to this name." They spat on my dreams of glass-botanical conservation, called it ridiculous, impractical nonsense. My father's voice, sharp as broken glass: "How's that gonna feed you? You'll rot in some irrelevant dream world." I heard his sneers for decades, but in my mind, I wore their mockery like armor, gritting my way through sleepless nights in a cramped studio apartment. My father's job at the chemical plant gave him a smug audience for his cheap jabs. "It's all just Play-Doh," he'd mock. "Not science, not achievement." My mother stayed silent then, but years later, I'd scrape memories from her face like old paint, wondering if she'd known, deep down, that I was silently stitching survival into my every bump and brushstroke. By 25, my father was proud, but his pride was a sour apple. "Great. You'll make us all proud when you're bankrupt," he'd mutter, the crack in his voice bothering me more than he knew. Then it happened. My plant cloning research, published when I was 27, stripped of credit by a pharmaceutical exec I'd naively trusted. A headline caught fire: "Radical academic fraud threatens global ecosystems." I burned my lab coat that morning, stomped on my notes, and left the city with a suitcase and a single sheet of glass. I'd seen the forests they wiped away in the news, razor-thin margins for survival, and I heard the voice in my head whispering, "No more. Not anymore." The greenhouse where I started was a shack without electricity, the pane of a window blocking the rain. For years, I grew endangered species in glass chambers, watching yellow pine saplings crackle through cerulean walls, thorns sprouting on glass ribs like magic. Each sculpture was a reacting ecosystem: vining ivy softening the edges of brittle prisms, daffodils pushing at fused quartz like modest defiance. Clients came, wealthy collectors from Davos and Dubai, reverent when I told them how each piece needed delicate care, how a temperature shift could kill the glass. Professionals sneered, calling it high-end landscaping with flair. But then the fires started. Droughts withered the landscape behind my studio. Species I'd helped revive vanished, one by one, until only a jagged scar of dead earth remained. A crow big as my fist landed on my windowsill. It cocked its head, pecking at dust until two cracks hissed open. I pushed the glass panes apart with trembling hands, at first as if parting sacred relics, then as an archaeologist of extinction, and saw the land beneath, scorched, skeletal and whispering of vanished worlds. When I bent down, tears smudging my vision, the crow opened its wings to a sunrise that felt like a funeral torch. The sentence bloomed in my mind unbidden: "I'll fix this." Years bled into decades. I borrowed, then inherited, then borrowed again until I had seed, that is, since seed banks collapsed too. I walked 50 miles through Atlantic storms, halfway between Washington and Nova Scotia, with a route from the now mountain-destroyed ranges. I found people selling the last hyacinths, smuggling them in teacup jars. I planted them where my doubters had irons, took desiccated matter across oceans, through Kiev's rubble, in the unfaltering hold of a cargo plane. Each cell was a war cry, weeks without sustenance. Then that plot in Kane County, the soil already barren as my bank account. I built a structure the townspeople called a mutter house of medicinal strangeness. A dome where I enclosed a handful of soil, glass capsules of air, and a young English oak I'd smuggled from Scotland. By sunrise the next day, its sapling root had fractured the earth. I wept, my laugh joining the wind's song. Soon others came, pioneers with cuttings, roots, questions. They built more enclosures, cities in glass. The media waves rolled in, videos of my artistry at TED stages, podcasts dissecting my methods. Celebrity investors arrived, more curious than hostile. They saw the metrics in my glass, the proof that beauty and biology could house themselves in unexpected ways. Though not without skeptics, Dr. Voss of the Moroccan Water Studies Group, harsh in my ear. "This is a facade," she said, blue eyes steel. Her criticism was fact-tangled, not cruel. I mucked under her standards, adding self-watering capillaries wrapped in quartz thread, and the Karoo rose bloomed beside Somalian vines, its petals stretching toward the horned fig that had cradled it. Clients sprouted like wildflowers until the investors, the ones who always lurk, I made surely of them, didn't I? The pencil trembled when I typoed a contract. The handsome face of a corporate CFO blinked inaccurately at my drawings, then vanished, leaving only an encrypted note. Takeover offer or face disintegration. Like a knife, the blow. They wanted my glory, not to save the world but to deaden it to profit. Parkwell Glass Corporation's banner flashed on screens like a thundercloud. I stared, and iced over pond and screwed the note into a gearbox, a compass of disgrace. Yet my palm preparation for battle lodged a truth deeper than spite. I had something they couldn't refute. If glass can grow, it's not a spark they put out. It's a fire they learn to revere. When April turned gold, I drove in through the storm. The war years had melted the town, flooded the highways, but my driveway remained, a tangle of ivy-choked stone. Mother opened the door, unkempt, her face a tremulous mountain. She sniffled at the packing tape in my grip, and I did as she learned. A rambling glorifies through tricks and treaty. Come home. We want to see what's all these nonsense collections you have? They traced their name in dust, found it dusty, even moldy. But then there was the map. My work in the Cascade Range, the Namibian desert, the outline of an archaic lineage linking my bioluminescent projects to an extinct magnolia species I'd revived. Lessons from old texts, cross-checked with modern diagrams in delicate histories of arid success. You're well. I admire it, Father grumbled, eyeing the glass. My gift, a hybrid Zuluan British lily, callback to my mother's lichen studies. I opened the windows and let the green spill in. Stalin screaming in Alive as my father's fervent rant sipped dry, the tanks and terrariums holding quiet the familiar venom. He pointed lingers firm. This what my toil away I'm reduced to. I knew the trick question was coming. What trophy are you going to fetch me this time? But before he squeezed the question's veiny heart flat, I spun, my love-spreading arms. The botanist parent emerged, dust smudges on her fingers, dirt-keen eyes, entranced. You've done more than bloom, she was unguarded. My mother's shoulders loosened, and as I walked backward into the living room, taxidermied otter styles lost to my planting wars, she presented my old jeans, patched, grass-stained, stiff with salt and triumph. They hung in the hallway, a modern mannequin's farewell to shame. Come morning, Rashef Kennebec called. Lillian. The city parks bureau knows. No emails, only the voice eroded with worry. A hospital bed's curse. They had cultivated endangerment that blind blinked. I rushed, across mist-washed quiet streets past shattered homes, to where a bailiff awaited a woman in a blue scrub. She recognized me but guessed at her, and pulled me to the plant. Venus's carnivorous treats, she told me, clinging to a pelican case, all slides cracked, glass brittle with restrictions. This is the last of the Tyran acuminata, she whispered, as if confessing. I slipped the case into my satchel, a tempest-eye anticipation. Then I stood at the interface of the waterfall and my lawyer's office door, every glass prepared like a lifeline. Her nipping words about liability and fees tackled the wind. Outside, I went back to the overcast Cascade, to where Dr. Voss strode behind me on the path. You took a risky approach, she said, flapping. You gambled with high-profile retreatments. She was wearing olive boots, raincoat stoop, and I imagined how similar a time-locked Rhodes voice would be. But I capped my jacket, the pelican tight in hand. Looks like the field's still open for bot, reversals growing every day. Voss followed her gaze to the horizon, but she didn't blink. I nodded, swallowing York's own words. Later, my arrival sparked the symposiums. Newspapers heralded Lillian the Mercury botanist Botswana rear as the underappreciated stalwart of carnivorous recovery. At dinner at the Hilton with Hooks and Harvard throngs, a crisp-haired botanist mouthed to no one she's a standout caliber. Her father's words fossilized in my memory. And so now, 4 decades on, I tend the wall inward, my glass-life cellular ecosystems in domes around the globe, the northern boreal packs leaning into Arctic light, the Cape bellflower weaving a tapestry on Melbourne, each moralistic queen's story a dwarf triumph, each an act refusing to shrive. My mother's laugh ripples me. You've given people a craft to sport. And my father, grumpy but crusted with opaque KMW glass, nods as if obliged to renewed pride, no matter his technocratic roots. When I judge newcomers, I meet their gazes, holding up my first terrarium, the Fusco primrose that cracked when my dad sneered. But this fragility holds the thing, alive, fractured. Foreign lens can't screw that up. The world bows. My place is the shattered clay that element love, and that's a victory sound no school rival could have anthemed.